as we all know, Israel is an incredibly small country. And as you just mentioned, and so it would be hard to avoid civilian casualties if, in fact, you are targeting these areas, unlike, for instance, if Israel were to retaliate and target Natanz, which is a nuclear facility inside Iran, which is more of a rural area inside Iran and able to avoid more civilian casualties. Talk more about that, the lay of the land in Israel.
Well, military targets, as you say, it's a tiny country. So military targets, military installations are spread throughout the country near civilian centers. Actually, there are very few, I would say there are very few military targets that are separated in any significant way from civilian areas. So again, Israel has a very sophisticated defense system, maybe one of the most sophisticated air defense systems in the world. We've been seeing a lot of the Iron Dome, haven't we, recently, which is that anti-rocket defense system shooting down rockets in the sky, short-range rockets. But the Iron Dome system is useless against ballistic missiles, for instance, or much longer range cruise missiles. On the other hand, Israel has two other defense systems, one is called David Sling, and the other one is called the Arrow system. And one of those systems is against medium range rockets, and the Arrow system is against ballistic missiles. So Israel is well prepared to shoot down these missiles that are on the way. The question is, how many missiles are on the way, and how many anti-missile rockets can Israel fire at any one time? So will Israel be overwhelmed by a large number of rockets on the way right now, or will Israel be able to shoot them down? So this is the question. And again, another significant question is, with all those rockets in the air above Israel, Israel's defense system firing at shooting down Iranian rockets, that's a lot of debris falling onto the ground all over Israel, could easily fall onto the towns, onto villages, affecting civilians. So however significant Israel's defense system is against these incoming rockets, there's a lot of debris and a lot of potential damage to civilians, regardless of whether they're near those military installations or not. So again, I emphasize that this is a moment of extreme vulnerability for Israel. And the question is, how many missiles are on the way? What is their payload? And can Israel shoot them down?
I know there are bunkers in Israel. Has there been any expression from the government asking Israeli citizens to seek shelter, to find bunkers for safety?
Actually, that's a great question, because so far there's been the Israeli home defense system has told people to be aware. For instance, they've closed all schools tomorrow. They've told people not to gather in more than 1,000 people in one place at one time, and that's about it. I mean, there haven't been any alarms any alarms that we've heard, because I guess the rockets aren't close enough yet. They will come, but there's been no significant move by the government to tell the people, go in your shelters. People here have not yet been told to go into their shelters. I'm sure they will be very soon, but it hasn't happened yet. But again, as I mentioned earlier, every Israeli home is supposed to have some kind of defensive room, what they call a safe room. And by the way, it's not every home. I must correct myself. There are many villages, especially Arab villages from Israeli Arab, that don't have any security rooms in their homes. So local Arabs are actually more vulnerable than Jews, if I can put it so crassly, because in the Israeli towns, each house that was built in the last 30 years has to have some kind of a safe room, a concrete room, which can protect their citizens against rockets or bombs. And that only applies to the towns and to many of the villages and many of the Arab villages.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.